also. Welcome all, and I hope it's going to be a great session. And welcome.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction, Rahul. So now I would love to invite Shubhang for his introduction.
Hello everyone, my name is Chobhan and I completed my GSoC with this year with GFOS Open Technology Alliance. Along with that, I've also been an MLH fellow for the batch one that was in the year 2020, and I've also completed my LFX mentorship under Anuket project. So I've been in and around with open source and various programs for almost in a year, and yeah, I mean I hope that this session turns out to be very fruitful for everyone who's watching and hope that I'm able to impart some things that I've learned so far in my journey.
That's great. And now I would love to invite Shivai for his introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ravneesh, and also others for their wonderful introductions. It is also great to sort of be on the platform with a few other folks a couple of months back on Communal, but I have been sort of contributing to open source for the past 2 years now and been involved with programs such as LFX mentorship program, MLS fellowship, and Gold Sort of Code. But yeah, like just looking forward to sharing some of my thoughts as well surrounding some of the new changes that have been made and how that really changes the ecosystem for a lot of the developers who are just coming into the open source scenes. So would love to share my thoughts as well. Thank you.
Okay, so that's great. So let's get started with the session then. So first of all, I would love to ask the audience, like, if everyone is comfortable in Hindi plus English, or we should take the session only in English. So waiting for your answers in the chat section. Okay, we can make use both. Okay, that's great. Okay, so firstly, we'll start with what's new with GSoC 2022. So as far as I know, now GSoC is open to everyone. So each and everyone can contribute to GSoC now. Previously, it was only open for the students. So let's have a take from our panelists, like what else is new in GSoC 2021 as or 2022 as well, compared to GSoC 2021 and previous years. So in this session, I'll be selecting panelists. I will be asking questions from the panelists, and I will be taking their names, and the respective panelists can answer the question. So the first question goes to Rahul. Okay. So, Rahul, what's new with GSoC 2022 compared to
So,
previous years?
as you already mentioned, the first and very first thing that's going to change in GSOC is now that it's not only limited to students now. Previously, it was limited to students who are 18 plus and pursuing any degree. It can be masters, it can be BTech, anything. But now it's open to everyone above the age of 18. So this can change many things. First of all, it definitely in it definitely increase the competition for students, because organization now wants more people, organization now have more experienced people for them to work, right? So they mainly prefer some experienced people. It also depend on the organization, where they will mention different types of projects, whether 5 projects are for students only and then remaining are for experts. There's also one concern, like in organization many people are already contributing, right? They are already students, already pass out and working experience, and they are on their free time contributing in GSoC. So maybe organization now wants them to get paid, so get they will find a way for them to pay through GSoC. So this will increase lots of competition for students. That's my first take. Second, I also believe that there are not many people outside the student community that contribute much, that are focused on the target, that are focused on the title GSoC. So if they want to contribute, they can contribute outside GSoC, and it's not compulsory for them. So it so my point is that it's mainly depend on the organization whether they are playing fair or whether they are not playing fair. The second thing that's new in GSoC is the flexible timeline. So now it can vary from 2 months to 3 months. I'm not sure exactly the weeks. So it can vary from 175 hours to 300 hours, depending on the organization. Also, organization control this whole thing. Google does not control the whole thing of timeline. So for any particular project, organization admin can set the timeline. Okay, this student is not comfortable, or maybe he has to go for 1 or 2 weeks. He can extend the period of his work. And third is the project limit. So project timeline. So there are two kind of project right now: small projects and large projects. So small projects have small amount of stipend, half amount of stipend. Full projects have full amount of stipend. So this can also, it can have both beneficial and non-beneficial way. And the only way to find out is when GSoC officially starts in 2022.
Yes. Okay. So would love to hear Shivai's take on the new changes, like the major changes ki now everyone can participate. So Shivai, what's your take on the same?
Sure. Thank you so much. So earlier, as Rahul also mentioned, that it is sort of limited to students who were in their colleges, and so even if they were like doing their masters or PhDs. But the biggest change that we saw is now that anyone who is coming into, let's say, making a change into tech, or they have recently graduated, or they are having tech experience, they can, apply for the program. So it has really opened for everyone. And the biggest reason why this change was done was keeping in mind that the diversity that this sort of increases. So now the program is not just limited to students, right? And anyone who is into tech can actually apply for it. So in terms of diversity, the program has really opened up for everyone else. And the main focus is now on diversity, and we have sort of transitioned from calling the program as Google Summer of Code student to now it will be called as a Google Summer of Code contributor. So we are now taking away that barrier that a lot of people faced because they were not aware about the program when they were there, when they were students. So that is a really positive change in my opinion, because that just gives the ability for a lot of other people who want to try out open source and who are making a career change in technology to sort of be able to actually contribute to open source projects.
Okay. So my next question is for Shubhang. So basically the question is ki, let's say that someone just started with open source and a person X has more experience than him and knowledge. So then why should a mentor choose that person who has a less experience? So that is a concern that I received via LinkedIn. So
Yeah, I mean, that's true, right? The mentor will try again. This totally boils down to probably the mentor's personal preferences, but highly likely chances are that the person tends to pick up the person who's more experienced, so that the mentor does not have to intervene that much. Because honestly, the mentors are volunteers that participate
hmm,
in Google Summer of Code. They don't get anything out of it. So even respecting their own personal time and space, they would rather have someone who can work independently rather than someone who's totally dependent on the mentor. So yeah, as Rahul said, that the competition is bound to increase, which is, I think, which is something that no one can deny, and it's totally up in the open. But again, coming to Shivai's point as well, I think it was very much needed because again, Google Summer of Code acted as a sort of a barrier because there is another program out there known as Outreach. If you see over there, it has been always been open for everyone since its beginning, right? It was not just restricted to students, and yet we see a major chunk of people that are selected as Outreach interns. They are basically students.
yes.
So I think this can translate very well in GSoC as well. It's all. So I would rather pick up a person who has more skills And I feel like students of these days are actually more skilled than their respective seniors in the next, like if there's a senior, let's say for the next 3 4 years, if they have graduated, like let's say in 2017-18, I'm pretty sure that today's students, like the third year and fourth year students, if they are very well aware of what is going around them, they are actually more skilled than the people who graduated like in 17 16, again due to major two factors: a availability of non-availability of such high speed internet. Learning MOOC culture is one of them. And again, open source exposure is basically more with students thanks to communities. So again, competition is bound to increase, that's for sure. But GSoC can learn that very well from outreach that students do still get selected. So yeah, it's all about like how willing, how hard, how willing are you like, able to work, stuff like that.
Okay, um, that's great. My next question is for Rahul again. Someone is asking, like, do first year undergraduate students qualify for GSoC? So, his concern is कि he really find this very hard as a first year student to get selected in GSoC.
So actually, yes, you if you are above the age of 18, you can apply for GSoC. It's this is the only limit, and the second limit right till 2021 is that you have to pursue a degree. But right now, it's there is only one limit that you have to be 18 plus. Now second concern is about having being in first year. So in my college, I was the first student who completed GSoC. In second time in year 2020, I again got selected, but the second student who got selected is from first year. So and now he is doing great. He got selected in Mozilla, I think. I'm not sure, but he's pursuing BTech degree, and he's just like you. And if he can get selected, maybe you can also get selected. And no doubt that being a first year student have some disadvantage. If you have skills, you have passion, you can definitely get selected.
Okay. The next question is for Shivai. So the question is, why does Google do GSoC if they are not earning anything out of it?
I think it's more sort of the responsibilities of the big tech firms to give back, and that is why a lot of them have adopted to open source. This is common thing, right? That Microsoft in 1998 said that open source could not exist. Yet in 2018 they bought GitHub, which is the largest open source platform, right? For billions of dollars. So it's really a lot of these companies have built a lot of great things, and they have even donated a lot of these things to open source. So, for example, for Google, they have done that with Kubernetes, right? They were one of the first companies to actually build on Kubernetes, and it's just that it's a sort of a way for them to actually give back to the tech world, right? And with that, they introduced the Google Summer of Code program. So in one of the mentor summits, we got to know, so like how actually the Google Summer of Code program started. Like just one day, one of the heads today at Google, the Google open source team, Larry Page, just told him that, hey, we want a program for students where they can contribute to open source projects. And again, yeah, like Google, it might look like that Google does not get anything out of it, but I think it's just the goodwill of these companies that they want to sort of get more and more people inclined towards contributing in tech. And it's a good thing, right, that we are having these kind of initiatives actually come up, and more companies adopting to these kind of changes, for a lot of unrepresented part of the tech also being able to actually come and contribute to these open source projects.
Okay. Um, Thank you so much for the answer, Shivai. My next question is for Shubhang. So, Shubhang, the question is, when will the applications open? And before the applications open, can we prepare a project proposal?
Again, I'm not very sure about the exact timeline since they
Mhm.
haven't been declared out. But the way that usually for the past years have worked out was the March 30th was the deadline to submit your applications. And the next question was, can you?
So the next question was ki before registrations, can you prepare a project proposal?
Yeah, actually, you are supposed to do that. That's what the part of GSoC is. So let's say the deadline to submit your applications is 30th March. So you're supposed to interact with your mentor for, I don't know, maybe a month. It can be said as a safe time. And you got to talk to your mentor about the project expectations, what you're going to do, contributes in some of the pull requests and stuff like that, and then start to prepare your report that you're going to submit along with the feedback from your mentor. I think that is the most important thing that most of the people do not focus on, is that you have to keep in touch with your mentor and take a constant feedback on what this proposal is supposed to look like. So yeah, I mean, even before the date, you have to work a lot on that stuff. So proposal, contributing regularly, and just keeping in loop with your mentor. So it starts way before the deadline. I mean, for me, it started when I applied 2 times in GSoC. That was in 2020 and 21. With 2020, I was trying to get in with Mozilla, so I started in December,
Okay.
and in 21 I started in February. So you see, it was almost like a month and a half before the deadline.
Hmm.
So yeah, you got to have in touch with your mentor before the deadlines are there.
Got it. So Aditya is asking, is there any roadmap for GSoC or specific path for the reference to prepare? So Rahul, can you please answer this?
I think Shubham already mentioned that the correct roadmap is to start early and then
Yeah.
understand your project from the beginning, because even professionals take some weeks to understand a project, right?
Yeah.
So if you are a student, you are not familiar with much of the technologies that are used to. You have to first get familiar with the version control system, Git, GitHub, how to contribute, how to make pull requests, all those stuff. And one of the reason organizations prefer to choose professional over student is that they can save time on these stuffs, right? So students are not much familiar with version control system, but professionals are already working in that, so they may choose professional over that. Other thing is, yes, you have to start early. December, November, this is the right time to start for any project. You can go to GitHub website, you can see different organizations which are continuously being part of GSoC from year 2015, 16, 17, 18, and you can make a educated guess that this organization is also going to be selected in this year. Then you can go to that organization and start researching about their different projects which are also going to be part of GSoC 2022. Most of the organization have pages where they mention their projects for the next GSoC. So you can start reading about those projects, understanding the tech stack used in those projects, get familiar with it, get familiar with the organization code base, and then start making contribution. Again, being in contact touch with mentor is one of the key to get selected in GSoC, because if mentor already know your potential, if mentor already know you better than other competition, then you have more chances to get selected. So start early, being in contact touch with mentor, and improve your skills. These are, I think, the best way you can have more chances.
Okay, so the next question is up for Shivai. Shivai Om is asking how to interact with the mentor. So, matlab, what channels, in particularly, what channels we can use, and what are the things that we should keep in our mind?
Yeah. So again, coming back to the point that was raised by Shubhang, that the mentorship is not something that these mentors are getting paid for. It's a voluntary position, and keeping that in mind and respecting that contribution that is being made by the mentor to actually help out with the projects is really important. Sometimes students might get super buggy. They might, constantly try to ask questions to the mentor, but you also have to keep in mind that we have to respect their time, and there can be times where you might get a delayed response, because again, it's not something that these mentors are working full time for the project. You might expect certain delayed responses, so you have to be respectful of that fact. So that's the first point. Now, coming to the most effective strategies that you can have to interact with mentors is, as both Rahul and Shubhank mentioned, that it's really important to start on early. So usually what will happen is that, okay, you'll join the IRC channels. It could be the Slack, it could be the mailing list, and you sort of get started with the project and at least get some basic understanding. So it what the mentors, or whosoever is the project maintainer, will at least they'll try to sort of think is that, yes, that whosoever is asking their questions at least has gone through the project. So general recommendation would be, just start by first looking at the project and just getting whatever sense or the understanding of the project that you can get by yourself, and then ask your questions, right? So don't expect that, okay, like you will be spoon fed. Yes, you can definitely ask for directions, and like if you get stuck somewhere, and you can ask your questions in terms of like, let's say if you're not able to understand a certain part of the program, or you want to get some more clarification on a particular issue that you want to work on, right? Or you're facing some issues with installation of the project. So in that case, you can definitely reach out to the mentors. And once you're done with that phase, right, you have started contributing to the project. The other part is, okay, now the projects themselves have been announced, and you can reach out to the project maintainers and the mentors that have been mentioned for the particular project to get, let's say, more clarity in terms of what exactly is the project. Then when it actually comes to submitting your proposal, maintaining that communication before the actual deadline for the submission of the project is really important, where you can share your proposal for review even before the actual final date of the submission, right? You can get that reviewed and incorporate the changes that have been requested by the mentors, and actually work towards those changes, and try to make yourself as familiarized with the project. Because again, the what the mentors and the the org admins are going to be looking at in your proposal are two main things. One is how well can you articulate about the program and about the project itself, in terms of how well do you understand its architecture, the underlying architecture. Have you sort of worked on it before the start of the program? It could be through some kind of a contribution, and even if it's not a contribution, at least if you can showcase some code snippets, and you have a very well structured timeline that you have defined for the program, right? For the project that you're going to be contributing to. And if you have had some prior contributions, those will be something that will showcase that, yes, that this contributor has a good understanding of the project. So that's the way you can sort of keep the communications with the mentor. But again, do keep in mind that you don't have to persist in actually asking them again and again. You have to be respectful of their time as well.
Okay. So the next question is up for Shubhang. So Shubhang, Sahil is asking, what are the tricks to build a good proposal? So basically he has written, as he has two different zones of works, that is a small phase of work and other is big phase of work for the long duration. So what should be a trick to build a good proposal for that?
Yeah, I mean, going for the second part of the question first, I'm not sure that how this small project scale and big project scale is going to play out, because again, I'm not very sure how this is going to work. But I think art of building a good proposal will apply to both of them in an equal fashion. So the way I went on with my proposal thing was, and again, this is in no means the best way to do, but yeah, that works out, right? For me, it was, my organization was very clear about the things that they wanted to implement in the new features, right? They had a very clear cut list that, hey, these are the features that we want to build, and we are looking forward to interns who can join us and work on that. So, excuse me, most of the organizations that I've seen so far, I mean, I contributed to Mozilla, Mailman, GNU Mailman, and GFOS. So all of them had a very clear-cut proposal stance that what they have expectations for from the student that's going to participate. So your proposal game should be to basically give the solutions of the problems that have been laid out by the organization. So that's very clear cut. So let's say my organization wanted to say that we want to build a video recommendation platform, right? So your proposal solution should look like, hey, these are the tools that we can use, these are the algorithms that we want to use, and these are the technologies that use, and this is the expected timeline that we want to complete. The utmost important thing in a proposal that a mentor is interested to see is your timeline and your commitment. So let's say your work duration is for 3 months. The mentor wants to clearly judge the amount of time that you require for every task, and whether A, are you underestimating your task or are you overestimating your task. These both of the things are very important, because the mentor, mentor is a experienced professional. He or she knows the amount of time that you will be taking to complete a task, let's say, right? So this is the topmost thing that a person judges from your proposal, is that whether it exactly fits the timeline, or are you on the either side of the spectrum. The second thing that comes up is that, are you even aware of the technology and the tools that are going to be used in the in the project, or you are just the one person who picks up trendy terms from Twitter and try to put it up in the proposal. Because again, you cannot bluff them. These people are working in the industry. So let's say if you say that, oh, so let's say there is this undergraduate, let's say first second year person who has no idea of machine learning, and let's say they are contributing in TensorFlow, and they start up picking up some random gibberish algorithms from somewhere that they have heard and trying to stick it up, thinking that maybe this could go. But again, unfortunately, that will not happen. So again, the second point that comes up is, you have to be very thorough about the technology, the tools, and whatever you are going to mention in your proposal. The third thing that comes up is, you always have to make sure your proposal conveys the message that you are open to the constructive criticism from your mentor. You're not supposed to give a 100% definitive answer solution in your proposal, but you got to always leave the space for, this could be changed further on the requirement of the mentor, or this could be further discussed with the approval of the mentor and then merged in something like that. So yeah, I think that what to me looks like a very good proposal. Apart from that, I think this year's 2021 students, as I said in my last session as well, we basically started up a repository on GitHub, and we have collected almost like 50 to 60 proposals for this year. So I'll probably leave the link in the chat, and then you people can go through it and try to understand what a good proposal might look like.
Okay. Thank you so much for your answer, Shubhank. So, I would love to ask Shibai about the two different zones of works. So,
Yeah.
what is your take on the same?
Sure. So as Rahul started off by mentioning that this time we'll be having large and small projects, and these again were sort of going to be divided into two parts. So till 2020, we used to have like the large projects, and in 2021 we were introduced about the size of the project was actually reduced, like the time, the entire duration. So depending on now whether you actually want to give that entire time for the large scale projects, you can do that, or if you want to apply for the small projects. So how this would work out is that Google will be recommending to all the participating organizations whether they want to, like, sort of a breakdown. For example, if let's say it's TensorFlow, so they might be given, let's say, 6 slots for projects. So they'll have to divide. It's not that they can choose all 6 projects as large scale projects. Every organization will be recommended to have a breakdown and keep a decent sort of a balance between both large scale projects and the small scale projects, and the scope of the project will be decided earlier on itself. When if you're talking about a large scale project, so what are the requisites that will be there for that particular project. So the projects themselves, when they are announced, they will be kept in that mind, okay, that okay, this will be a large scale project and this will be a small project. So when student, or like whenever the contributors they apply for the projects in 2022, they'll have the option to either choose the large scale or the small scale projects. So that will be mentioned beforehand, and even when it actually comes to the project scoping, if someone has a particular idea of their own, which is actually quite often done while submitting the final proposals, even in that case, basically, as the contributors they submit their projects, they will have to clearly mention whether this is going to be a small or a large scale project. And depending on that, the contributors will be preparing their proposal, and even before, when the projects are selected, the different organizations will be sort of going over what's the scale, because what happened in 2021 was that there was some lack of clarity for some of these organizations, because a lot of them thinking that yes, the students might be able to actually complete, a lot of the students were not definitely able to complete their projects in time. So this time a lot of thought will be going to that as well.
Okay. That's great. So, before taking up the next question, I would love everyone to check the link that Shubhang just sent in the chat section. So, as Shubhang mentioned that the GSoC 2021 people have created a GitHub organization and a GitHub repository where they share all their proposals. So, if you want to write a good proposal, so you can have some looks at those previously submitted proposals that were approved by the mentors. So the next question is up for Rahul, and it is how to make the deadlines realistic. So he is saying that when we don't really know that how much time it would take, can you please provide some example?
Okay, so while mentioning your timelines, first, if you are a little bit familiar of project, for example, if I give you a task to write an essay about coronavirus, you may have some little idea. Okay, there are many things happened during this last year. It may be of 1,000 to 2,000 lines, so it's going to take around 3 hours, and then maybe 1 hour for final touch up and all those things. Similarly, if we talk about projects, you you should have little bit of idea, not 100%, but maybe at least 20 to 30% idea about how it's going to, how much time this particular thing is going to take. There are obviously, in every project there are some abstract algorithms which we, or which even mentors don't know how much time it's going to take. Maybe there are some research part, maybe there we have to try different things before moving to next thing, so these things could take time, and you have to dedicate a particular time slot for these abstract times. So if you know, okay, this particular algorithm, like writing a machine learning algorithm, would take me 2 days, then maybe 3 days it can happen. Some, maybe it can happen that some abnormalities would arrive, or so you have to add those time, those abstract time in your timeline also. So instead of 2 days, you write 4 days. 2 days I am sure, but 2 days I'm not sure. And this is how you can get a particular very realistic idea of your timelines, right? So I would do that.
Okay, so the next question is up for Shubhang. So, Shubhang, how much minimum coding experience do one need to participate in GSoC?
Um, I mean, there is no way to quantize this,
Mm-hmm.
but I would rather say that no matter how much people say it, GSoC sort of turns out to be a competition,
Yes.
right? It is an open source way of contributing, but unfortunately, due to the amount of people that they want to participate, it slowly turns out to be a competition. So I think you have to be on your toes for that. I mean, there is no fixed way of like how much programming do you need. But I think if we go around this panel and maybe we can share our experiences of what we were on that stage when we were selected, so that will probably give you a rough idea. So I'll start with mine. So I applied. So my this proposal got selected when I was in my fourth year of engineering, and for my second year, I was like avidly into hackathons and stuff, and I also submitted one of the proposals in Mozilla in my third year as well. So you see, I wasn't selected in my third year, and it took me almost a year from that point onwards to try to understand the skill sets that I lacked that time. And I've been programming for past three and a half years, you could say. And it took me almost, you could say, my skills to be selected as a GSoC student took somewhere around 2.5 years. But on the contrary, I know a junior, again, since I was the person who did not had computer science in its schooling days, it almost took me an year of my first year of engineering just to understand the concepts, right, On the contrary, I had one of the junior who was very, good with programming since he was in class 8th or 9th, something like that. And he was selected as a GSoC student in Linux kernel in its first year. So if you ask people around this panel, you'll understand that Linux kernel is a big thing because it's hardcore C and C++, and it takes a lot of actual knowledge to get selected in Linux kernel. But to see that junior getting selected in the first year, it's basically you cannot quantize how much programming you need, but that should give you an example, a slight insight of how much amount of how much time you have spent on using various tools and technology. So that guy, even though in his first year of engineering, he had an experience of programming for past 4 years. So for him, this was particularly his fifth year when he was programming. For me, it was my fourth year of programming that I got selected. So again, I am not here to discourage anyone. Again, it is not at all possible for us people to quantize of how much skills you need. But this should probably give you a fair idea that contributing to open source is one thing, getting selected in GSoC is another thing. Contributing to open source, anyone can without any prior experience whatsoever. Thanks to communities like these, you people can actually contribute to any project you want. You can start with documentation, you can start with pretty bug fixes and typos, stuff like that. But in order to get selected in Google Summer of Code, I think you need a bare minimum of what you could say as open source etiquettes, right? You must be very well versed with version control system. You should be very well versed with the at least 20 to 30% of the baseline of that project that is going to use. So my project was, let's say, in Django. So for me, if I wanted to get selected, I should at least know 20 to 30% of the components that project is using. Rest 70% can be learned on the go. But yeah, you've got to have something as a baseline. I think the people can share their experiences too. Shivai, want to go next?
I think Shubham probably mentioned most of the points, and as he mentioned that you need to at least know the basic concepts of Git, GitHub, those on. Probably it could be something else as well in terms of the version control system, if there's some other platform that is being used. So apart from that, just getting a basic understanding of the project will anyways allow you to understand what are the underlying tech stack that is being used for a particular project, and you need to at least be well familiarized with the basic concepts of that particular tech stack, right? So with a particular language, for example in Python, if you're contributing to a project that has been written in Flask, so at least knowing the basis of how Flask actually works, right? And it also sort of depends on the project itself. Now, there are certain projects like Shubhang mentioned, the Linux kernel. For that matter, a lot of people contribute to the root project from CERN. So these projects are definitely hard, and that's without a doubt saying that they are difficult to understand. It will require you to have a really good, deep understanding of certain technologies, of certain programming languages, while there might be certain other projects that might be more focused, might be more beginner friendly. And a lot of organizations will actually mention what's the difficulty level of a particular project. So they'll mention it's like easy level, medium level, or it's hard level. And depending on how much amount of experience do you have with that project, you can sort of think about, okay, what might be the not necessarily years of experience that you might require, but at least the amount of knowledge and the kind of practical work that you have done in that field. So going over some of the past projects, and because what happens is, yes, a lot of times new projects are also there in terms of the projects that are like coming out in every year, but some of them like some of the projects might be some of the older projects as well. So by looking at some of the patterns from the previous years, you can get to know, okay, like you can expect the root project to actually be there for 2022 as well from CERN. So you will get to know the amount of work that you will have to put in for being able to actually just understand the project and then also being able to contribute to it. So it's definitely, as Shubham mentioned, nothing we can quantize, but just exploring will give you a good understanding of how much amount of experience you might require. And as Shubham mentioned, that so many people are applying. So in order to ensure that, yes, if you want to increase your chances of getting selected, you will have to go up and about, like up above what's the bare minimum required for the project, and really get a deep understanding of how the project actually works, and get yourself really get started contributing well before the actual deadline, so that you can showcase to the mentors that yes, not only are you're interested to contribute to the project, but also you are there for the long game, that you are going to be contributing to the project for not just for the program itself.
Okay. Okay. So the next question is up for Rahul. So Rahul, the question is, how can GSoC help someone in his professional journey?
Okay, so GSoC is life changing for you if you get selected. And it's not because of the title Google Summer of Code. It has some part, but majority of part is you get experience of working in a real world project with real people who are working in that particular project from last 4 5 years. So you get that experience. You get to know how a real project is made, how to contribute, how to work in a team. So if you are in second or third year of your BTech degree or any degree, and you got this skill early, when companies came in final year, you are already 2 or 1 years ahead of your other people. And when they are learning version control system, you already showing them your projects that I have in last 2 years I have made this particular project, which is now a real project and working in VLC or Linux, and it's real code work in production. So this will give you a boost in your career. And second thing is obviously GSoC title. GSoC title is some we are quite familiar among in India, also in India mostly. And if you go to a company and say, okay, I have completed GSoC in year 2020 or 2021, 2 years, this should give them a good image of you, like this person know more because he has contributed in GSoC. And if that organization doesn't know, if that company doesn't know about GSoC, then maybe it's not a right company for you. I would clearly say that. So uh, taking me as an example, I completed my degree in 2021, March 2021, and right now I am SD3 in Walmart. So it's not easy for people, but because I have those skills, I got familiar in those skills. My career is just good because of GSoC.
Okay, that's good to see, yeah. Okay, so the next question is up for Shivai. So, Shivai, Arpan has asked that he's a working professional. Will the guidelines for like anyone to contribute could help him? And also the thing is, the benchmark as a contributor, would it be higher for a working professional than a student or not?
I don't think so, because again, the idea is to give everyone a fair chance. Now, yes, I mean, on the surface of it, it might seem that someone who is a working professional with, let's say, 5-10 years of experience might will definitely probably have more programming experience than, let's say, someone who is in their first year of college. But again, we have to keep in mind that as we are opening up these like the entire program for anyone to be able to contribute above the age of 18, a lot of times people probably might not be able to give a lot of the time, right? Because it is going to still take a good amount of time for you to be able to contribute to these projects, right? Even if you do apply for a smaller project or even for a larger project. But I don't think so that the guidelines are going to be changing, because now even contributors from experience are going to be coming in, right? Again, what matters is how well do you understand the project, how much have you contributed to the project prior to the Google Summer of Code a proposal submission date itself. What the mentors are again looking for is how well is the contributor who has submitted the proposal, how well do they really understand the project in and out. And second is, can they bank on this particular candidate for the long term? Because it has happened for me as well when we were deciding on a couple of different projects in back in 2020 when I was mentoring for Jenkins. We did receive some really good proposals which clearly had some more amount of experience, like probably even 1.5 times the experience as compared to some of the other candidates. But these students, like at that time they were students, so they never interacted with the mentors. They submitted their proposals and that's it. But there were some other folks from the community who were regularly interacting with the mentors. They had gotten their proposals reviewed prior to the submission deadline, and we sort of thought that yes, it's better to go with someone with probably lesser amount of experience, but someone who has the eagerness to learn and will actually stick with the organization beyond the program itself. So those things will still be there, right? And keeping in mind that yes, a lot of times working professionals might not be able to actually give that much amount of time. I don't think so that will change the landscape of the program itself that much. The guidelines are still going to be these two main focal points for most of the organizations, at least.
Okay. Thank you so much for your answer, Shivai. So, I would love to ask the audience if they have any questions, they can put up their questions in the Q&A section. So, the next question is up for Shubhang. So, Shubhang, particularly the question is ki on what factors do the applications of GSoC get selected?
Um, the factors would be, again, I've already, I think, answered it in the timeline question. Is a realistic timeline is one thing. Your knowledge of your tech stack should be conveyed by a proposal. Again, putting up something random that you found on Twitter is not a good proposal. You got to have an in-depth knowledge of what you are actually going to do. The third thing would be uh, your constructive feedback loop with your mentor in this particular proposal. So for me, my mentor actually reviewed my proposal at least 8 times that I remember. He was actually a very good person and he helped me throughout the entire process. He actually reviewed a lot of times my proposal and said that, okay, hey, do this formatting, because since my project was under an umbrella organization, he wanted to make sure that it goes out as a very well put proposal in the bigger org. So again, this feedback is very important. Feedback loop is very important. The fourth thing would be again formatting. As I said, that for some reasons I always thought that this would be the last thing to be prioritized, but somehow formatting does matter. Again, it's all about the presentation, right? And the fifth thing, I cannot come up with any fifth thing, but I think open source skills and etiquettes. You are polite on the chats and you know how to converse with people. That is actually, you could say, underestimated skill, but it's not easy to convey your messages using text, right? It's most of us, like, if we want to talk to our friends, we usually, I don't know about the rest of the people, but it's like my tendency to pick up my phone and directly call up my friend. It's little difficult to convey your feelings and your exact intentions using chat. But that is a important skill set, especially since before, at least before GSoC selection part, you got to talk to a mentor, the community, and everyone using the chat format only. So please pick up this good skills and, like, typing etiquettes. Your message should not go convey anything different from what you are going to convey. That is like an important. And again, one thing is probably language barrier, but I'm not sure how that works out with different organizations. Like for me, my mentor was Greek, right? So he wasn't very well versed with English. So we were supposed to tone down our the format of the way of writing English to a bare minimum, not to use any fancy words and just be straightforward. So that may be a thing. Time zone, maybe, I'm not sure, because I was in like +3, so that worked out well for me. But yeah, these are some of, I think all of this comes under a basic etiquette of what a person should be online. It's not just focused on GSoC. This could be applicable to any place, right? You go onto a Facebook group, you don't start abusing people straight away. You got to take your stance, understand what's the discussion that's going on in the forum, and then try to speak up rather than just putting up some gibberish. But yeah, these are some of the factors that can actually help you get selected. Some of these, as stated points, may look as if they are not important, but trust me, they are. It works out well in the end.
Okay. Um, so the next question up is can someone learn simultaneously while applying for GSoC? Let's say that I am a noob. I don't know. Matlab, I just want to participate in GSoC, and I am not familiar with any tech stack as of now. So, what if I just start learning, make a proposal, and try my luck at GSoC? So, what are um, your recommendations on that? This question is open for all, so we can start one by one. Okay. So, firstly, Rahul.
Okay, so this may seems to be a concern for you, but it's the actual reality of everyone. No one is expert in anything, and if you know 10 or 20% of that project, it's more than enough. You can learn everything on the go because when GSoC start, when your proposal selected, you have a particular timeline dedicated for learning or maybe getting familiar with all those stuff. So you can use those particular timeline in getting familiar, and even if you have a weekly task that this week I have to perform, I have to implement this particular feature, 1 week is more than enough to learn something, to understand something, and then to implement, because coding 90% is thinking and understanding, rest 10% is just writing different code. So if you are good in problem solving, if you are confident that you can learn on the go, then you can go. I also, when I my proposal got selected, when I select a project, I'm not 100% confident in that project. There were some terms which I don't know. There were some libraries which I don't know yet. But I selected a particular project and start writing proposal. While writing proposal, I learned those things. I learned about those libraries and those things, which also improve my proposal. And again, I get so much of learning material from my mentors. They send me different stuff which can be useful to me, and during the community bonding period, I use my whole community bonding period just to get myself familiar with the code base and with the writing structure of that particular organization. So it's more than enough if you have 20-30% of knowledge and you can learn on the go. It's
Okay. So next up is Shobhan. So
Yeah.
what is that?
Yeah, I'll definitely give an example of myself because in 2020 I was exactly in the same situation. So as most of you must be knowing that Mozilla is a big organization. They have this set minimum expectations that you are supposed to know this much amount of things, right? So my project was involving React as well as Django. For those of you who are not familiar, React is a front-end library and Django is a back-end library. So at that point of time, I was just familiar with Django, and yeah, I started to contribute, and then there comes another contributor who was well equipped with both of the skill sets. Now, had this been just me, it would have worked well enough. As Rahul said, that you just need to know 20 to 30% of the tech stack. That would have easily worked out because I was the only person who knew the 20 to 30%. But as soon as there is another contributor who knows maybe 32% and you are still stuck on 30, then this 30% does not work there, right? So it's slightly a relative thing. But again, you're not supposed to know everything because the point of Google Summer of Code was to incite students to participate in projects that are used around the globe, right, on a production grade scale. And unfortunately, due to the barrier of our education system, you're never actually exposed to such sort of you could say production grade products. So you got to you cannot have knowledge of everything about it. But the thing is that whenever you are in that sort of competitive setting in GSoC, the more you know, the better you are in the stance of getting selected. So for me, I did not know React, and I think that was a major chunk of why I wasn't selected in 2020. And apart from that, I think, yeah, for this year as well, I think I was just familiar with Docker, but I wasn't again familiar with how the production Kubernetes thing works. So that was something that I picked up on the go. But this time I made sure that it was not just 30%. I made sure that, yeah, okay, maybe this time I'll learn more about the skill sets that are actually required. So it's a relative thing. But again, you can never know 100%. I mean, if you know 100%, I'm pretty sure you won't be in the stage of actually participating in GSoC. You would have been doing better things than GSoC. There are better things than GSoC for sure. right? And if you know 100%, I'm pretty sure you won't be participating in GSoC.
Yes. Okay. So, Shivai, what's your take on the same?
Yeah, I think that probably most of the points that I want to share were already shared by Rahul and Shavang. But I'll just go on to say that yes, as Rahul also mentioned, that if you are such kind of a person who is confident enough to actually learn on the go, because again, like Google Serve Code is not an internship, right? You
Yes.
will be learning a lot of new skills as well as you're contributing, right? So that is definitely true. Now, that bare minimum that is required to really just understand the basic conceptual part of the actual code of the project that you want to contribute to, that's the bare minimum that is required. But of course, I mean, you'll have to learn a bit more than that, or have experience, a little more than what's required as the base level requirement that you have, so that you're able to contribute to new features, right? For example, let's say, so that's required. But of course, I mean, that goes on to say that it's not absolutely necessary to be like 100% aware of the entire project, or know each and every single line of the code of the entire project, right, to be able to be get selected. Just making sure that you are aware of at least those parts of the program which you feel will be, let's say, required during the initial level of the, or during the initial times of the program itself. That's something, if you're like very well aware of, or sort of, you understand the code, that should be good enough to get started with.
Okay. So, the next question is how to contribute to open source project from now itself, especially Androids and Android projects. What kind of project should be proposed to an organization? And the other question is, what kind of projects can we select for Android? So, this is also open for everyone. So, who would like to answer?
I can go, but I'm not sure about the Android stuff, to be fair. But I think it again. See, the most of the advices that all three of us are giving,
Yes.
I think it applies to every type of organization, you could say. So far, whatever advices we have given, and it works out fairly well in any open source program, not just GSoC, by the way, right? So again, the first thing that comes out to is what type of language you're comfortable with, right? I think as far as I remember, Android is now written in two languages these days. The one is Java and the other one being Kotlin, right? So if you are a Java person, make sure that you pick up an organization that still uses Java. Or if you're a Kotlin person, I think you will get enough organizations that work on Kotlin. So that works out well, right? The other one is how do you start contributing to open source? Again, you don't really have to start straight away in the Kotlin code. The one thing would be you could, so let's say if you are someone who's developing in Android, I'm pretty sure that you know how to open Android Studio, how to set up the JDKs, I think that's what they're called, and how do you basically start an application, right? How do you develop and debug an application? So let's say if you go to a project and you see that there is something lacking in their documentation with regards to how to start up the project, that could be a very good way to start contributing to that project, since you can contribute to the documentation, right? That's as important as contributing to code. So that's one thing that you can do. And yeah, I mean, that again fans out to any sort of how do we start with contributions. So for me, even I started with documentation. My first PR was basically a intro to what you're supposed to do in the debug mode for Mozilla. So that works out very well in any form of organization.
Okay. Okay. That's great. Thank you everyone for joining the session, and thanks to all of the speakers, the panelists for the session. And hope you all have got your doubts cleared. And if there is anything else that you want to ask, you can join in the GSoC channel. So I am sharing the link for the GSoC channel in the chat section, and you can join the GSoC channels and ask your doubts there. Also, we have share your lab contest going on, so you can contribute to a lab and get a chance to win a t-shirt. Apart from that, on Monday we are going to have another session on DSA. So we'll be discussing about arrays, interview questions that are asked uh, on arrays, and we'll optimize their space and time complexities. So once again, I would really like to thank all our panelists, and um, hope you have a great weekend.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
So all the resources for the session would be shared via the feedback mail. So please do check your mails and give your feedback regarding the session and utilize the resources.